House number 1. This Queen Anne Victorian in Winona, New Jersey was built in 1874, and unlike almost everything we've covered before, it's not falling apart. It's the opposite. This house has been restored to what the listing calls impeccable condition, wrapped in a color scheme of deep purple and lavender that makes it stand out from every other house on the street. A round turret rising off one corner like a lighthouse keeping watch over the whole property. Here's what makes a fully restored 150-year-old mansion unsettling in its own way. Everything original has been preserved almost too perfectly. 2 sets of ornate wooden double doors open into a marble foyer with hardwood floors, a fireplace flanked by church pew-style built-in seating, an elegant hanging chandelier. Church pews repurposed as fireplace seating inside a private residence. Whoever built that detail in wanted the entryway to feel like something closer to a chapel than a living room. This house has 7 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms across 3 full stories and multiple fireplaces scattered throughout. One with a custom mantel in the formal living room. Another in the second bedroom with a bonus sitting area tucked directly into the turret itself. That turret room appears twice in this listing. Once downstairs as a sitting area, once upstairs attached to a bedroom, a vertical column of curved glass and wood paneling running the full height of the house. Down in the basement, this home has a custom-built wet bar with seating for 6, opening directly into a family room and a dedicated wine room with built-in wine racks lining the walls. 3 additional storage rooms branch off from that same basement level, all walkout access, all fully finished. A house built in 1874 now houses a fully stocked entertainer's basement, 2 full floors below its original marble foyer. Out back, a detached 2-car garage has an entire second floor listed as flexible, workshop, game room, craft room, or cigar room, the listing says, without settling on which. Another unclaimed space in a house that already has more purpose-built rooms than most people know what to do with. The 3rd floor holds a sitting room large enough to double as a second family room or playroom, plus 3 more bedrooms, the 5th with its own updated bathroom. That's 7 bedrooms total, spread across 3 stories in a house that started as a single Victorian family home nearly 150 years ago and now functions more like a private estate with a bar, a wine cellar, a chapel-style foyer, and 2 separate turret rooms built one directly above the other. Built in 1874, restored top to bottom in the years since, painted in shades most owners wouldn't dare touch, and finished with a wine room, a 6-seat bar, and church pew seating built directly into the entryway fireplace. Asking $575,000 for a house that looks less like it survived the last 150 years, and more like it's been carefully, deliberately kept exactly the way someone wanted it preserved. Right down to the turret rooms, stacked one on top of the other, watching the street below. House number 2. 124 Church Street in North Adams, Massachusetts, built in 1890. 10 bedrooms. 3 bathrooms. Over 6,000 square feet of Queen Anne Victorian architecture sitting on less than half an acre in the middle of downtown. This house has a nickname. Locals call it one of the Grand Dame's 2 circa 1800s Victorian sisters standing side by side on Church Street inside a designated historic district. This one is falling apart in real time. Look at the roof. Slate tiles, original to 1890, now caving in on themselves near the rear gable. The wood framing underneath is exposed to open air, rotting where rain has been getting in for who knows how long. Windows are boarded shut with plywood floor to ceiling on both the turret and the main facade. Whoever boarded it up did not want anyone getting a look inside. Now walk through the front door, past the checkerboard tile steps, and you're standing in what used to be a formal sitting room. The ceiling has collapsed, not cracked collapsed, hanging down in sheets of horsehair plaster and wood lath, curling like it's trying to peel itself off the frame. There's a fireplace mantel still standing, untouched by whatever caused this. 2 pianos are buried under the wreckage, one of them split open, keys scattered across a floor that's ankle deep in debris. Nobody's touched this room in years. Keep going and the house shifts completely. Through a carved wooden archway, hand-carved, original woodwork, the kind you can't buy anymore, there's a second room, and it's almost untouched. A hanging brass lantern still swings from the ceiling. An armchair sits alone in the corner like someone just stood up from it. A pocket door frame, original hardware still intact. It's the kind of before and after you don't expect to find under one roof, total structural failure 10 feet from a room that looks like the family could walk back in tomorrow. That's the story of this house. 10 bedrooms of Gilded Age craftsmanship, elaborate brickwork, granite accents, grand staircases, sitting one hard winter away from total loss. And the price tag makes it worse. This home is listed at $67,000. The Zestimate says it should be worth $237,000. That's a 71% gap between what it's asking and what it's supposedly worth, because nobody wants to take on a roof that's already failing and a ceiling that's already down. The tax assessment says $311,400. The owner's paying over $5,000 a year in property taxes on a building actively falling apart from the inside. It's zoned residential, 6 off-street parking spaces, full basement, public water, and sewer, all the bones of a normal home. But normal homes don't have exposed roof trusses open to the sky. Normal homes don't have 2 pianos buried under a collapsed ceiling in the front room. This place has sat on the market since July 2025. 52 active listings in the same zip code right now, in a market Zillow itself calls neutral, meaning buyers aren't exactly lining up for restoration projects like this one. Just blocks from Mass MoCA, one of the largest contemporary art museums in the country. A short drive to Williams College. Downtown walkable, surrounded by restaurants and churches and a public library. On paper, this location is a selling point. In person, it's a warning sign because a house this deep into decay, sitting this close to everything, usually means one thing: nobody local wanted to touch it either. Whoever takes this on isn't buying a fixer-upper. They're buying a race against a roof that's already lost the fight in at least one section, a ceiling that's already come down in the room you walk into first, and 2 Victorian-era pianos that are never coming back. $67,000 gets you the shell of one of North Adams's grand dames, and a very real chance the rest of it comes down before anyone finishes restoring it. House number 3. This one's in Rockville, Connecticut. Asking price, $334,900. 5,900 square feet. Built in 1885, and it's never been lived in not once in over 140 years, because this house was built as a funeral home, and it's still zoned as one right now, sitting on Elm Street, directly across from Talcott Park, where kids play on the swings a few hundred feet from a building that spent a century preparing bodies for burial. Take a look at the outside first. Classic Victorian shaped turret, wraparound porch, steep gabled roof, the kind of grand old architecture you'd expect from a wealthy 1880s estate. Pale yellow siding, dark brown trim, a rounded 3-story tower on one side. From the street, it looks like any other historic New England home. It is not. The listing itself says it plainly. This is presently a large funeral home. Never lived in. Not once in 140 years has anyone slept a full life in this house, because nobody was ever supposed to. Inside, the layout tells the real story. The main level was built for business viewings, services, embalming space. Upstairs, there are 4 bedrooms and a full bath, because whoever managed the funeral home lived above the deceased. A 3rd floor adds 3 more bedrooms and another bath, bringing the whole structure to that nearly 6,000 square foot total. 3 stories of a home where the living and the dead shared the same walls, just a staircase apart. Here's where it gets stranger. The town's own records don't reflect the true square footage the listing flags that outright. Assessed value, $338,000. Appraised value, $482,700. The asking price sits well under both of those numbers. And there's a reason. This is a possible short sale, and the mortgage holder has to approve any offer before the deal can close. Someone is losing this property, and the bank still has final say over who gets it. The zoning is PN planned neighborhood development, and the seller lists an enormous range of things this building could legally become. A group home, assisted living, a nursing home, a church, a school, a daycare, for children or for adults, municipal offices. There's only one thing on that list that isn't allowed. It cannot remain a funeral home. Whatever comes next for this building, its original purpose is the one thing zoning won't permit going forward. Structurally, the listing calls it sound. Newer roof, newer burner. No reports of decay, no collapsed ceilings, nothing falling apart. This isn't a crumbling ruin, it's fully intact, fully functional, and still holds the shape of exactly what it was built to be. That's what makes it unsettling. It's not falling apart. It's just sitting there, ready, still smelling faintly like a business that processed the dead for well over 100 years, and the decor makes it worse. Underneath the Victorian bones, there's a layer of dated 1990s interior work, the kind of carpet and paint choices that don't belong in a 140-year-old building, sitting on top of a structure that was never meant to be cozy in the first place. Whoever buys this isn't just buying square footage on Elm Street. They're buying a building with a legal history of handling bodies, a bank that has to approve the sale, town records that don't even match its real size, and a hard rule baked into the zoning that it can never go back to what it was. $334,900 for 5,900 square feet, directly across from a public park, in a building that has never once been a home until whoever buys it decides to make it one. House number 4. This is Greylock Mansion, 209 West Chestnut Hill Avenue, Philadelphia. 25 rooms. 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, 16,581 square feet. Built in 1909. And it just took a $200,000 price cut. Built by steel magnate Henry A. Laughlin in an era when steel money built houses like small castles. And that's exactly what this is, Gothic stone. Arched entryways, chimneys stacked against a slate roof. A fire escape bolted onto the back of a 115-year-old mansion because somewhere along the way, this stopped being a private home. Look at the front approach. A winding tree-lined driveway leads to a stone entrance with a covered archway carved stone. Leaded glass. A single hanging lantern in the middle of it. It looks less like a front door and more like the entrance to a cathedral. The stone itself was quarried right there on the property to build this place. Nothing about the exterior was mass-produced. It was carved out of the ground it sits on. Now go around back. This is where it gets strange. There's a low stone structure sitting alone in the yard, an outbuilding, moss-covered, doorless in places, standing separate from the main house like a crypt. Stone retaining walls climb the hillside behind the mansion in tiers, cut with narrow steps, all of it overgrown with vines creeping up the corners. It doesn't read like landscaping. It reads like ruins. And there's that fire escape a black iron staircase zigzagging down the back stone wall. The kind of retrofit you only see on buildings that used to house a lot of people who weren't family. That detail alone tells you this mansion had a second life after the Laughlins. Inside, the listing describes marble-tiled floors in a grand hall with a clear sightline straight through to the far side of the house, opening onto a massive, entertaining patio. White marble staircases, ceiling heights built for a different century of living. Luxuriously large living and dining rooms flanking that patio, with views out over 3 to 4 acres of front lawn rolling toward Wissahickon Valley Park. The listing itself says many rooms still hold original historic detail that the next owner needs to preserve, meaning nobody's touched or modernized big parts of this house in a very long time. The property sits on close to 6.5 acres, bordering 1,800 acres of protected valley parkland. There's a separate carriage house 240, 500 square feet on its own, with garage parking, listed as flexible enough to become an office, an in-law suite, or a workshop. That's a second building on the property nearly the size of an average American home, just sitting there, unused. Here's a detail that matters. Property taxes here are unusually low for a house this size because of a conservancy easement tied to the land. $32,767 a year in taxes, a lot of money, but far less than you'd expect for 6+ acres and 16,000 square feet. That easement is a legal restriction on the land itself, permanently tying this property to the conservation land next to it. Financially, the numbers are strange too. Zillow's Zestimate puts the value at $5.8 million. The current ask is $1.795 million. That's a gap of over $4 million between what the home is estimated to be worth and what someone can actually buy it for right now after already dropping $200,000 off the original price. 8 bedrooms. 25 rooms total. A separate stone structure in the back matching nothing else on the property. A fire escape on a private mansion. Original woodwork nobody's replaced. A $4 million gap between value and price. This is a house that Steel Money built, that something else clearly happened to since, and that's now sitting quiet on the edge of 1,800 acres of protected forest waiting for someone willing to take on what's inside it. House number 5. 508 North Union Street, Natchez, Mississippi. $279,000. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, nearly 4,000 square feet. Built in 1910. Sitting right in Natchez's historic downtown district, in a town that's called America's most haunted small town. Look at this exterior first. Pale yellow siding, teal shutters, a 3-story turret with a steep slate spire poking up above the trees, wraparound porch with carved gingerbread trim. A water tower looms directly behind it, visible over the roofline like it's watching the house. This is textbook Victorian Gothic, the kind of house that looks pulled straight out of a ghost story before you even step inside. Now go through the front door. The staircase alone is worth stopping on dark carved wood. A newel post topped with a hand-carved finial. Deep red stair runner climbing up into shadow. Gold walls, wine-colored velvet drapes hanging over the doorway to the next room. Every inch of this hallway is original 1910 woodwork. Still intact. Still standing. Nothing about this house has been gutted or modernized into something generic. It looks the same as it did over 100 years ago, and that's exactly the appeal. And the concern. Here's the number that matters. The tax-assessed value on this house is $8,000. Annual property tax, $196 a year. On a 4,000 square foot Victorian mansion. That's not a typo, that's how undervalued this property has been sitting for who knows how long. Which usually means one thing: nobody's been paying close attention to it. The listing itself tells you what's actually going on underneath the woodwork. Roof has been resealed, meaning it needed resealing. Some windows have been remade, meaning some windows failed. Electrical and plumbing have been updated, but only some of it, which means some of it hasn't been touched. In a house built when Taft was president. The listing calls it, in its own words, a diamond in the rough. That's real estate language for it looks beautiful, but there is work being hidden under that beauty. 76 days on the market already. 2,356 views, 109 saves. People are watching this listing closely, but nobody's pulled the trigger. In a town built on plantation wealth, yellow fever epidemics, and more documented ghost tours than almost anywhere else in the country, a 116-year-old house that sat untouched long enough to be taxed like a garden shed is exactly the kind of place people watch from a distance rather than walk into. 2 staircases worth of dark wood. A turret room at the top nobody's mentioned what's used for. Carpet in some rooms, hardwood in others, tile in the bath, meaning different eras of renovation happened in different rooms, and never all at once. Ceiling fans in a house old enough that it originally had none. 3 separate fireplaces, one in the bedroom, one in the dining room, one in the living room, all in a home with forced natural gas heat now, meaning those fireplaces stopped being necessary a long time ago and were simply never removed. 4,000 square feet, $70 a square foot, in one of the most reportedly haunted small towns in America. A staircase built before electricity was standard in most homes. Windows that have already needed replacing once. A tax bill that says the county forgot this house existed for years. $279,000 gets you the whole thing: turret, staircase, gingerbread porch, and whatever's living quietly behind that red velvet curtain. House number 6. This one's in Madison, New Jersey. $899,000. 10 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, 3,563 square feet. Built in 1880. Sitting on 2/3 of an acre, and the realtor wants it sold by the end of June. Look at the roofline first. 3 separate steep Gothic peaks, each one topped with ornate cresting, one rising into a narrow turret with a diamond-paned window at the top, built from rough-cut stone, trimmed in dark wood, with a covered front porch held up by heavy stone piers. This isn't a house that was styled to look old. It is old, and it looks like exactly what it is. The man who built it was Daniel Burns, a stonemason, working around 1880. That matters, because the exterior stonework on this house wasn't contracted out to a random crew. It was built by someone whose entire trade was cutting and setting stone. Every angle of that facade, every arched window frame, was his personal craft. Here's where the history turns. This was a single-family home until 1929, the year of the market crash. After that, it stopped being one family's house and became a boarding house. 10 bedrooms, under one roof, holding strangers instead of a family, for who knows how many decades after the country's finances collapsed. That's not a renovation choice. That's a house that watched its owners lose everything and got carved up to survive. 3 full stories, 10 bedrooms spread across them, 5 bathrooms, trying to serve all of them a ratio that tells you exactly how a boarding house operates. Not spacious suites. Small rooms, close together, built for turnover, not comfort. The listing calls it, in its own words, a diamond in the rough. That phrase is doing a lot of work. It means the stone shell the part Daniel Burns built with his hands is still standing strong after 145 years. But everything inside it needs full imagination to bring back. Numerous period details remain throughout the home, according to the listing, meaning nobody stripped it down. It's still wearing its original bones, boarding house scars and all. There's already a real plan attached to this property. It's been approved for a 2 to 4 car garage under an amended site plan. That's not nothing. Someone's already done the zoning legwork for whoever buys this next. But approval for new construction on a lot this size also tells you the current structure alone isn't seen as the finished product. Somebody's already planning to build something new next to a 145-year-old stone house that used to hold boarders through the Depression. Sitting on 2/3 of an acre in a well-kept New Jersey town, surrounded by manicured lawns and newly built neighbors, this house stands out for exactly the wrong reasons: 3 Gothic peaks looming over a street of ordinary homes. Stone walls that have outlasted the family who built them, the market crash that ended their ownership, and every boarder who passed through since. $899,000 for the shell of a 19th century stonemason's own house one that stopped being a home in 1929 and has been waiting ever since for someone to decide what it becomes next. House number 7, 118 East Pine Street, Independence, Kansas, off-market, active under contract. Estimated value, $140,000. 5 bedrooms, 7,111 square feet, built in 1874. 3 full stories, a 4-car detached garage, and 0 bathrooms listed on the entire property. Read that again. 5 bedrooms, 0 bathrooms. A house over 7,000 square feet, built when Grant was president, and somewhere along the way, every working bathroom either disappeared or was never counted at all. Look at the exterior. A round brick turret rises off one corner, capped with a cone roof, windows curving with the brick in a way that only skilled Victorian masons could pull off. The rest of the house is faded red brick paired with white wood trim that's peeling in long strips, whole sections down to bare gray wood. One upstairs porch has partially detached from the frame, sagging away from the house like it's trying to leave. Windows on the top floor are broken out entirely, black gaps where glass used to be. Walk the property and you'll find a carved stone post standing alone in the side yard, with a rusted iron ring bolted through the top. That's a hitching post, a place where people tied up horses before this house ever had a driveway. It's still standing exactly where it was planted 150 years ago, forgotten in a patch of dead grass. Inside, one room tells you everything about the house's condition. The ceiling has been torn open down to the joists, bare wood beams, exposed insulation, wiring running loose across the rafters with nothing covering it. Below that, a genuinely beautiful carved wood fireplace mantel still stands against the wall, green tile surround intact, mirror still hanging above it. Original hardwood floors, stained and gouged, run underneath scattered construction debris. It's a room being gutted and preserved at the exact same time, mid-project, with nobody around to finish it. Here's the number that explains the price. 5 fireplaces. 5. In one house, and heating listed as natural gas, meaning this place was built in an era before central heat existed, when every room needed its own fire to survive a Kansas winter. Those 5 fireplaces are the ghost of how people used to live here. One room at a time, in the dark, in the cold, waiting for the fire to catch. The annual tax bill is $844 on 7,000 square feet. That's not a typo. That's what happens to a property's assessed value when a house has been vacant and deteriorating long enough that the county barely counts it as worth anything. 0 bathrooms on paper for a 5-bedroom, 7,000 square foot house means one of 2 things. Either the plumbing has been ripped out entirely, or it was never brought up to code to begin with. Either way, whoever lives here next is starting completely from scratch on basic sanitation in a house old enough to have watched Kansas become a state. 3 full stories. A detached 4-car garage on 0.6 acres. A turret room at the top with broken windows open to whatever's coming in and out of them. This home is already under contract, meaning someone somewhere decided 7,000 square feet with no bathrooms and a torn open ceiling was still worth the risk. $140,000 for a 150-year-old brick mansion with 5 fireplaces, 1 hitching post nobody's touched since horses were parked out front, and not a single working bathroom to its name. House number 8, 401 Roosevelt Avenue, York, Pennsylvania, known locally as the Roosevelt House. 14 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, 4 separate kitchens, 8,229 square feet. Built in 1890. Listed at $584,900. 4 kitchens in one house is not a normal renovation. That's a house that got carved into pieces over 135 years, subdivided into multiple units, each one needing its own place to cook, and somewhere along the line, nobody bothered to reunify it back into a single-family home. Look at the front. Pale green Victorian siding, deep red trim, 3 full stories climbing into steep gables with carved wood detailing under every peak, a wraparound porch with turned wood posts and gingerbread brackets. Stained glass sidelights flank the front door in red and gold. This is the kind of house that anchors a whole street, and the listing says exactly that. It's been a focal point of York City since the year it was built. Step inside and the layout gets stranger. One room still has its original chandelier crystal, hanging from a ceiling with a hand-painted floral border wrapping the crown molding, deep green paint, dark wood trim untouched since the Victorian era. That room opens directly into a completely different space. A modern kitchen with oak cabinetry, granite countertops. A breakfast bar 1990s renovation work sitting one doorway away from 1890s craftsmanship. 2 centuries of design decisions forced to coexist under one roof. Here's the number that matters most. This house sold for $91,000 in July of 2018. By October of 2021, it sold again for $395,000, a 334% increase in barely 3 years. Someone bought this place for almost nothing, poured money into stabilizing it, and flipped it for 4 times the price. That kind of jump doesn't happen to houses that don't have serious problems to begin with. The listing itself reads like it's trying too hard to convince you. Golden opportunity. Instant bankroll. Great bones. Endless possibilities. Multiple dollar signs stacked after every promise of income. That's not how you describe a simple, stable rental that's language built to distract from something. And when you look at the actual numbers, the estimated rent on this 8,000 square foot 14-bedroom property is listed at just $1,131 a month. For a building this size, that's a number that doesn't add up unless something about the current situation is far more complicated than turnkey. The annual tax bill is $9,691 on an assessed value of only $153,000, a fraction of what the home last sold for. That gap between tax assessment and market price is the kind of disconnect you find in properties that have changed hands fast, been renovated in patches, and never had their paperwork catch up to reality. 14 bedrooms means this was very likely operating as a rooming house or subdivided rental property for most of its life. Not a single-family Victorian mansion the way it was originally built in 1900. 4 kitchens confirm it. Somewhere in this floor plan are the ghosts of walls that used to separate strangers living in the same house, cooking their own meals, never speaking to each other. Inside a mansion built for one family and one family only. Slate roof, radiant gas heat, unfinished basement, 9 parking spaces out back for whatever this building becomes next. A house within a block of Farquhar Park, an easy drive from Baltimore and Philadelphia, sitting on 0.36 acres, everything about the location says stability. Everything about the interior says otherwise. $584,900 gets you 14 bedrooms, 4 kitchens, 1 crystal chandelier from 1890, and 135 years of decisions nobody ever fully finished making.